if you don't do the work and you stay stuck where you are, do you have time for a breakup? Do you have time to go through divorce? Do you have time for child, dealing with single parenting or, going through multiple horrible relationships? Do you have time for a restraining order like myself? Like really, like let's look at it in perspective and to say like, okay, what comes good if I do the work? What could potentially go bad if I don't do the work? And if I stay stuck, there's so many things that can just continue to just go wrong and be horrible. But if I do the work, I really open myself up to having a lot of time, a lot of good, actually more time in the long run, because
Yeah.
now I'm not dealing with arguments and fights and breakups and heartache and all this craziness that sometimes comes with bad relationships because we haven't done that work.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. Well, welcome to the Unveiling the Beast podcast. Can you tell myself and the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Thanks, Katie. Pleasure to be here. Looking to unveil the beast today in myself and hopefully some of your listeners, right? So, who am I? My name is Bryan Power, and boy, that's a loaded question. I'm a guy who is just, I think of myself for the most part as an average Joe. Just that typical guy. If I like it, most guys like it, type of thing. I don't know. I'm intelligent, but I wouldn't say like I'm over the top. I don't know. I just think of myself as average Joe. I came from a crazy family, crazy, upbringing, difficult childhood, if you will, childhood of the 70s, really. And
Mm,
really struggled a lot in my adult life. Was in the fitness business for almost 20 years, really passionate about staying healthy and fit. And then through life experiences, I came across a really great program called Integrated Attachment Theory program last year. And that really helps build relationships. And that's something I struggled with for most of my adult life. And have finally, I think I found some answers that are really starting to have some good effect. And that only came about through a really tumultuous, crazy 2024 where my wife and I really kind of went through some stuff, but ultimately that led to some really great stuff. And so that's what I'm here to share with you guys today. So,
awesome. Are you willing to just like dive right in and go into your story? Because I'm
yeah,
very
sure.
curious about, um, yeah, the story with you and your wife. You told me a little bit in your thing, but yeah,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
do
no,
it.
so in 2024, my wife would and I would go from what I thought was a pretty good relationship. I mean, we had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. Overall things were pretty good. We didn't really have any financial issues. There wasn't, infidelity. There wasn't really drug abuse or anything that was kind of really out there. It was just your typical
Hmm.
fights, parenting styles, a little bit different. That really played a factor. But it was kind of a death by a th thousand paper cuts. I think over time, we were just struggling to connect on certain issues and struggling to communicate properly. And early 2024, we had a fight again, a little bit about my son and some parenting styles. And she would actually challenge me at that point to see a therapist. Which at that point I said, okay, fair enough. I'll go see a therapist. I'm willing to, see if I can listen and learn and figure something out here. But I also challenge you to see a therapist because in my mind, she was the one with all the issues, right? And in her mind, I was the one with all the issues. And so the first thing I learned was that we all have to take ownership of our own issues. That is the first step towards healing. But that really set us on a path that ultimately would end up pretty good, but set us down a crazy path. For the next 4 months, as we began to do some work, it really brought up a lot of childhood trauma, especially with my wife. She was seeing a childhood trauma specialist, and the emotions began to get really all over the board. And as she began to really, kind of feel this out and try to figure things out herself, it started triggering my wounds. A lot of my abandonment wounds were coming up from my own dysfunctional childhood, and that just set us on an emotional clash for the next 4 months. which ultimately culminated with a restraining order against me for emotional safety. It really had nothing to do with physical violence, never threatened my wife
Mm.
physically. But the emotional clash was so heavy that she just finally couldn't take it anymore and reached for that. At that point, I thought it was over. I was like, this relationship is done. I can't figure this out. I just didn't know what was going on. And I was just trying to move on with my life. But fortunately for me, I'd come across a woman named Thais Gibson, Thais Gibson, and some of her work about attachment theory. And about a month before I got kind of kicked out of the house, I came across this stuff, and I was really fascinated by the work. And I really just wanted to, learn more about this. I saw a lot of answers there. And even though I was separated from my wife, didn't think we were getting back together, I just wanted to continue to learn it so that I could, get better for myself. And ultimately,
Mm.
I would able to do that, and become a coach now. I actually help others through the program, and not only that, to top it off, my wife and I were able to kind of come back together. Sorry to spoil the ending, and now we have a really great relationship together since all that happened. So a lot of the healing that we did has paid off, and really working to our benefit now. We have a really great relationship today. So
Mm. I love all of that. And what stands out to me is the deep work. Because I think the deep work, I mean, that's what I do as a coach too, is like I help people do the deep work. But so often we're like wandering around this earth with thoughts and beliefs and just things going on in our head that we don't even know are there. But that's what's actually driving our behaviors. And it's fascinating when two people come together with their own sets of beliefs and things that they don't know are there and they start clashing. And then I think it's beautiful that you both did healing on your own so that you could like restart this beautiful thing. That's what I heard from it.
yeah, no, that's about right. That's one of the things I learned so much is about the subconscious and really how the
Mhm.
childhood trauma wounds and not just childhood trauma, we can get wounds throughout our adult lives as well, but a lot of it does go back to our childhoods. First 7 years of a child's life are very very, critical as to how they develop and some of the ways they see the world, if you will. And, for my wife and I, we had both had very dysfunctional early years, if you will. And so that really set us off with these, really bad filters, the way we were kind of viewing things and the bad ideas about relationships and, unhealthy thoughts about ourselves subconsciously, though. So that's the thing. Consciously, I
Yeah.
felt pretty confident. Consciously, I feel pretty good, right? But subconsciously, a lot of those childhood wounds were still being played out in my brain and the way I was kind of handling all my adult relationships and really my adult life. Until again, it was kind of brought to a head through this experience where it really became glaringly clear that we both had some work to do, and luckily we were able to kind of do some of that work and begin to heal and put it back together. But until then, until you really figure that out, you can go through your entire life, on autopilot and
Hmm.
doing a lot of bad things and struggling through life in ways that you shouldn't have to struggle simply because you just have been set off in a bad pattern and you have some of these really unhealthy subconscious thoughts. And so I really encourage anybody to learn about that, figure that out, and begin the healing work so that you can really get to the other side of that. Because once you heal that part of it, it really does become pretty beautiful.
Yeah.
No.
One thing I'd like to add too is sometimes I hear, well, I don't have time for that, or the time's gonna pass anyway. Like, go be your
Yeah.
favorite self, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's hard. I get sometimes that, doing this work can be challenging and sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I don't have the time. But what's the pros and cons of that, right? If you don't do the work and you stay stuck where you are, do you have time for a breakup? Do you have time to go through divorce? Do you have time for child, dealing with single parenting or, going through multiple horrible relationships? Do you have time for a restraining order like myself? Like really, like let's look at it in perspective and to say like, okay, what comes good if I do the work? What could potentially go bad if I don't do the work? And if I stay stuck, there's so many things that can just continue to just go wrong and be horrible. But if I do the work, I really open myself up to having a lot of time, a lot of good, actually more time in the long run, because now
Yeah,
I'm not dealing with arguments and fights and breakups and heartache and all this craziness that sometimes comes with bad relationships because we haven't done that work. So
yeah,
and honestly, you can do a little bit of work every day, and just that little bit of work every day can start to really compound and ultimately lead to some great changes. It's not like you have to do 10 hours of work a day. Half
Yeah.
hour a day for a good period of time, it begins to really pay some dividends. So start off small and go from there.
Yes. I'm interested in this framework that you were talking about that you like just dove right into. Can you tell me
Yeah, I
more
mean,
about it?
so integrated attachment theory is really based off attachment theory itself, which attachment theory has been around since like the 70s pretty much. And I watched a video by Thais Gibson on the Mel Robbins podcast. She talked about the attachment theories and attachment styles. And it was about an hour and 15-minute long podcast. I encourage anybody to go to YouTube and look for that. And at the end of that hour and 15 minutes, I was blown away because I really saw, my wife was on one side, I was on the other side. I saw all the other things that she was talking about, and I said, "Wow, man, there's some real answers here." And this girl seems to really know, kind of what's going on. So I was impressed with that. And as I delved into her work, I just became more and more impressed. And what she did was she actually put together a program called integrated attachment theory, which is really taking us from, it's one thing to know your attachment style, but it's really
Hmm.
another thing to begin to heal the attachment styles and move us from the insecure attachment styles to a secure attachment style. And that's the work that she did. And that's the work that I decided to really delve into. And I really learned the 6 core pillars of that program. And those 6 pillars are, number one, your core wounds. That's the subconscious thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves that we don't
Hmm.
even realize we're doing, right? It's just, again, it's on autopilot. And the other thing I learned is that 95 to 97% of our decisions in life are made by the subconscious, and that the conscious cannot outwill or overpower the subconscious. So if consciously we think one thing, but the subconscious is thinking something else, the brain is always going to go to that subconscious pattern, and it's going to fill its needs regardless of how unhealthy that decision is. Even if it hurts us
Yeah.
more later on, the brain wants to fulfill its needs immediately. So that was a powerful thing that I learned first off. The second thing is, so core wounds, number one. Number two is going to be our needs. What are our needs? We have to really understand what our true needs are, to begin to learn of that, and then begin to fill our needs on our own, not really outsource our needs to everybody else. The more I can fulfill my needs, the happier I am on a daily basis, and I'm in a lot more control there. So number two is our needs. Number three is our emotions. How do we get control of our emotions? And then how can we use our emotions to actually learn from them? What are our emotions telling us? Because emotions are really just information. Okay, there's a reason that I'm feeling a certain way. So if I'm angry, if I'm hurt, if I'm frustrated, if I'm, just anything like just distraught, whatever, I got to think, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is the thought that I'm having that's causing this behavior and this emotion? And so when I begin to backtrack that, I start to realize, oh, wait a second, I'm feeling scared because I feel like you're going to abandon me. Let's say I have a fear of abandonment, right? So maybe in my relationship, I'm afraid that my spouse is going to leave me, so I act in certain ways that are not necessarily healthy. And so understanding that and really using the emotions to learn about ourselves is huge. Number four is boundaries. That's something a lot of us don't know how to do. How do I have healthy, good boundaries? How do I set those boundaries? I always say the boundaries are like the fence around the house. We're the
Yeah.
house, and the fence is there to protect us and teach others how we expect to be treated and what we really want in our lives. So that's important that we learn how to do that. Number five is communication. In the past, my wife and I would try to talk to each other, but I was always listening to defend, right? Anytime she would try to bring a subject up to me, I think this is classic. We listen to defend because of my own wounds, my own ego, if you will, won't allow me to just listen to her and try to really understand her. So
Yeah.
listening to defend really would just cause more problems because then she would always be like, "You're not listening to me." And I'm like, "Of course I'm listening to you because I was listening very intently because I just wanted to defend myself, but I wasn't listening the way she was wanting me to listen. And that was to truly understand her. And so now we know how to listen and actually listen to each other in a way that really begins to understand and move the needle so that we can really kind of solve problems together and do things in a way that's awesome. And then last but not least is just our behaviors. How do I have healthy, good behaviors and change some of the negative stuff that I've been doing maybe and turn those into good, positive things so that, again, I can have a life that, again, is more beneficial and not destructive in negative ways. So those 6 core pillars to me were just game changers, and they still are, because I feel like if you work on all 6 of those, they really just work synergistically to have a really great relationship. And the thing I liked about them the most is I can look at one and say, okay, I need to work on, better communication. And then if I feel like I'm getting better
Yeah.
there, then I might say, oh, wait a second. I just realized I need to set a boundary that maybe I need to work on some boundaries, and then maybe I need to change a behavior. Oh, I'm acting in a way that I don't like that. I need to work on that. It just gave me six things that I can really kind of look at and begin to, work on and, improve on. And as I did each one, it just, to me, I just get better and better at it. It's like anything else, it's practice. So you got to, at first it's a little weird and a little awkward,
Yeah.
but you learn it, you practice it, you get better at it. And all of a sudden you're doing this now on autopilot and it's easy. It doesn't take any time now. All that time I put in before, I don't have to take all that time to continue to do that. That's not to say I don't put time in to continue to learn and stay in the game, if you will. But
Hmm.
again, it's a lot easier today than it was in the beginning trying to do all that work and learn it all. But once you do it, it's amazing. Now I have all these great tools that I can use in different
Yeah.
situations. So
Yeah, I like too that you mentioned like one at a time because, sometimes we try to do it all at once and then, we say screw it and don't do it, but like one at a time, um, it gives you room to breathe, you know. Um, and I also love that this exists because, like you said, the attachment theories are there or theory. I don't know if it's multiple. I'm gonna have you go into that next, but um it's one thing to learn something and it's another to implement it, to change it or
yeah.
do whatever you need to do with it to heal yourself.
No, absolutely. And that's again, exact. I thought the learning about the attachment styles was informative.
Styles,
It
yeah.
certainly opened up my eyes, right? I was like, "Ooh, wait a second. There's some patterns that go on with different types of people, and so we can kind of fit each other into some different categories." Now, that's not to say that we all fit in this box perfectly or anything like that, but essentially we can get a
Hmm.
pretty good picture of different people and how they're acting and look at some of those wounds, and they kind of fit in different categories, and that just began to make some sense. But again, yeah, it's one thing to understand that helps a little bit, but then to actually begin to heal it. That was next
Yeah.
level stuff, and that's what I love about what Thais Gibson did. Is she just created this program to not just understand it, but like, yeah, let's see if we could fix this and do some work that can actually move us, into a healthier zone and teach us how to have good relationships. Because how many of us don't know how to do it? We don't have these
Yeah.
tools. It's not that we don't love each other. It's just that we don't have the tools and the understanding necessary to make a real relationship work. And I always say there's nothing
Hmm.
worse in life than losing the person you love simply because you don't have the tools necessary to keep them. And that's just the problem is we love each other. A lot of times we do love each other. We just don't have tools. And then eventually that relationship breaks down because we don't have the tools to fix it and keep it working properly. So we got to get the
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah, I love that. And especially for people who only know like their normal would be to the outside world like toxic relationships, but that's their normal, so they don't
Sure.
know. They don't know.
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a
Yeah.
toxic, type of thing. That's what I saw early on in my life. And so I've been in some, I've had some reasonably healthy, but compared to my parents maybe, but still a lot of chaotic. And that's what I was used to,
Hmm.
a lot of chaos in there and some different emotional swings and all this craziness. So yeah, if we don't know any better, that's what we fall into. We just think that's normal. That's our perception. Again, a lot of times it's what we grew up looking at, and that's what we just think is, oh, well, this is the way the world works. This is the way things work. And we develop these patterns as kids to help us survive. And they do.
Hmm.
They help us survive as kids. And that's a great thing. That's a defense mechanism. That's how we operate as kids. The problem with that is as we become adults, we take that same pattern and that same thinking into our adult relationships. And that's where they don't work anymore. The same patterns that worked to help us survive as kids are now hurting us and damaging us as adults in different relationships. And that's where we have to do the work to go, oh, wait a second. We need to unprogram that bad stuff and reprogram the good stuff. We need to have healthy, good
Yeah.
thought patterns going into the brain on the subconscious level and not those unhealthy subconscious thought patterns going in there. Again, just to put us on autopilot because most of our decisions in life are on autopilot, no matter how hard we
Yeah.
think they're not. A lot of times, yeah, the subconscious is running the show.
Yeah. Could you, for the person who has never ever heard of attachment styles, could
Yep.
you just kind of do a rundown? I know they're more in depth. Like you could just do a whole episode on just those, but Could you do
Yeah.
like a general rundown of
Yeah,
what?
like I said, if you want to get in detail, go watch the Ty Gibson video on YouTube. That's great. But to give you a quick synopsis, there's four different attachment styles. Number one, you have a secure attachment style. That is a person who really knows how to communicate well. They're fairly emotionally balanced. The relationship is important. They like to be in relationships per se, but if they break up or things don't work out, they're not over the top distraught about it. They kind of move on with their lives in a healthy manner. They're not falling apart like that. They just know how to set boundaries, right? And they do everything the way we're supposed to be doing them. And however they got there, sometimes it's just good parenting, or maybe they just lucky they kind of figured it out. But they're the ones that we want to all aspire to be in that type of, that the secure attachment style. Unfortunately, for most of us, we fall in the other three categories. So there's the anxious preoccupied. That is somebody who really craves connection. They really crave relationships. They really love to be connected. They don't like to be single. They like to be in a relationship. A lot of times they're over communicating, especially early on, 10 times a day, always reaching out. A lot of times maybe they fall in love after a week or two. They're already got the wedding bells going and then stuff like that, right? People pleasing can be a big issue there. A lot of codependency sometimes where that crosses the boundary there. And because they're over the top like that, again, it just comes to a point where it's unhealthy. It's not that connection is bad. It's just that craving it so much and needing it so much sometimes causes it to be overboard and overbearing. Especially if you have the person on the other side, which is the other unhealthy attachment style, is called a dismissive avoidant. And so a dismissive avoidant, they typically learn how to kind of deal with their emotions on their own.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they have a hard time, even getting in tune with their emotions. But even when they feel them, emotions are bad. When we feel them, they isolate. They want to really a lot of time alone on that. They fear being trapped. They love to be very independent, hyper independent. They communicate a lot with their actions and not so much verbally. So a lot of times they think they're communicating because of the way they're doing things, and they just
Mm-hmm.
expect the partner's supposed to understand that. But again, sometimes we don't always understand just the actions. We need some verbalization in there. So they just have a different way of doing it, and it's very difficult if you put those two together, right? So if you have somebody who's anxious and somebody who's more dismissive, and now they're in a relationship together, you could see where that could really be a problem. So even if they love each other, and a lot of times they do fall in this pattern. A lot of times anxious preoccupieds will find dismissive avoidance, and they are in the relationship together, and now they're struggling, and that's why, because they have such different perspectives on how to handle relationships and emotions and everything else. And now it just becomes really problematic. In between there is the last one, which is called a fearful avoidant, or some people call it disorganized attachment style, but we call it a fearful avoidant. And that person typically swings between both. They sometimes they're on the anxious side. They're very connected, feeling really good about relationships. And then maybe next week, out of the blue, for no reason, they may just be like, "Hey, they're breaking up with you," or maybe they're causing some drama that, again, just out of the blue seems like doesn't need to be there, and it's just kind of more chaotic and all over the board. So you can see where just again that's unhealthy either, right? So very hard to get a
Yeah.
read on that, and hard to be in a stable, good relationship when it's like that. Those three attachment styles just have a lot of wounds, subconscious wounds that again are driving this bus in those unhealthy styles. And until we do that work, we kind of stay in those, and we stay in those patterns. And but we can. The good news is we can do the work, and we can move from the unhealthy attachment styles to the secure attachment style. And because we weren't born with these attachment styles, we just learned them through our lives. And so we just kind of have
Yeah.
this filter. So until we change that filter, we turn it and we figure it out, and we kind of move to the direction of secure. And now we can go from the insecure to the secure, and that's the part that's hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really resonate with like I'll share a little bit about my own story.
Yeah.
My husband and I have been friends for 25 years.
Wow.
And uh we've both been doing a lot of work, but his go-to way to deal with things when he goes, we call it going dark. We all have those dark moments,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is he just shoves the world away.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's me. I have severe abandonment issues. And so
Yeah.
like there was always this like clash of he's just dealing with his stuff over here. And I've always known this about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm over here going, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? Is everything okay? What did I say? And so it's
Yep.
like, oh my gosh, woman. So yeah,
And
heal.
that's normal. That happens so often. that just happens so often to so
Yeah.
many of us, and we end up in this push-pull dynamic where, one's pulling away, the other one's coming in, and it just becomes that real, unhealthy dance, if you will. So yeah, but now if you know
Yeah.
that and you
Hmm.
understand that a little bit better, it's a little bit easier to give that person a little bit of space. And that's sometimes where we need to work on, right? And on the flip side, if your spouse knows, hey, you know what, I know that my wife here is anxious and she's, wanting some connection, they can come our way a little bit. So we kind of meet in the
Hmm.
middle. They need to meet us in
Yeah.
the middle and vice versa so that we can kind of work together and really kind of make it work a little bit. But yeah, understanding the other person can give us a perspective so that we don't have to internalize it as much on our own. When they need a little bit of space, I don't have to feel like the sky is falling, and that
Yeah.
everything's done and it's all my fault. Maybe it's not. Maybe they just need some space to
Yeah.
process, and that's just the way that works sometimes, right? So it's something that's where
Yeah.
learning and understanding these attachment styles can definitely make a difference. Because if I act off of that anxiety, like you said, if I'm acting off of that, then that can cause them to pull away even further and get more and more
Right.
frustrated. Right. And now
Yeah.
and now they're getting angry, and now it's like, hey, you won't give me the space, and now it's causing more problems. So that's why it's important to learn this stuff for sure.
Yeah. I do want to emphasize for the listeners, and this goes more into the work that I do with people, is the number one relationship that you can heal is the relationship with yourself. Because
Absolutely.
then I don't want to say then none of it matters, but then like at least in my example, I know that when he does pull back, which he will because he's still alive, he's still going to have emotions, he's still going to go through his dark times. I know, and I'm comfortable enough with myself to know it's not me, you know? And that's the relationship I would look at first,
Oh
in my
yeah, I
opinion.
agree with that.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that
Yeah.
100%. It's always the relationship to ourselves is number one, and then that
Hmm.
over spills into a lot of the other relationships, that we have in our lives. But yeah, the relationship to myself and to yourself is
Yeah.
absolutely the most critical to heal and learn about and really truly understand yourself and begin to work through that so that yeah you can handle these different situations in a much healthier way for sure. And that's the
Yeah.
only one we're in control of. We're not in control of the other
Exactly.
person anyway, so we can't control how they're going to act, what they're going to do, or any of that stuff. We can only control our feelings, the way we think, the way we react and do things in our lives. And so that's
Yeah.
why we can only work on ourselves. Let's work on us.
Yeah.
Yep.
I tell my people too, I'm like no matter where you go, when you walk around a corner, there's only going to be one person there for sure, 100%, and that's you.
That's right.
So
No matter where you move to, no matter
no
what
matter
relationship
where
you're
you go.
in, you
Yeah.
could be in 20 different relationships with other people, but you're still in the relationship with yourself every day, for sure.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So, can you tell me where people can find you?
Yeah, if anybody wants to learn more about my work, what I do, go to my website at makeyourrelationshipfail.com or myrelationshipfail.com. And you can take our attachment style quiz. You can learn what your attachment style is completely for free, quick and easy to do that. I also challenge everybody to join the personal development school, which is Ty Gibson School, through my website. When you do that, you're going to get the best price available. And there is a treasure trove of of videos and workbooks that you can do in there. And all along the way, I want to give you a free session. If you want to, I'm happy to sit and chat with you. I'll give you a free consultation strategy session here. Let's talk about your situation, see if we can move the needle for you in the right direction. So set up an appointment with me. Again, on my website, you can do all that at makeyourrelationshipfail.com or myrelationshipfail.com, and let's see if we can help you out. And if you want to, work with me down the road as a coach, we can do that. But even if you don't want to, if you don't feel like you need a coach per se, although happy to do that, but if you don't do those things, because those things are really going to set you off in the right direction for sure.
Perfect. Well, I have one more question for you, and I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is, if the entire world stopped what they were doing and looked at you and said, Bryan, please give me some advice, what would you say?
I'd say you're in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. my, my thing is to everybody. Again, I think a lot because of my own experiences that I think no matter how bad it looks and no matter how bad your situation looks, I really feel like a lot of times these situations we're put in are to really bless us and to really help us grow and to challenge us and give us an opportunity to fix some of the things that are broken so that we can actually come out on the other side and have things be better. And so that's why I call my business Make Your Relationship Fail. It's not because we want it to fail. It's just that sometimes failure is what happens to us. And when it does happen to us, we don't have to take it as such a punishing experience. I used to think I was being punished when these things happened to me. And now I realize I'm actually being blessed. I'm actually being given an opportunity to look at it, change it, grow from it, and actually be blessed from it. When I do that work in these situations, I can come out on the other side and be truly blessed. And I always talk about a Super Ball. When you take a Super Ball and you throw a Super Ball on the ground, the harder and faster you throw a Super Ball on the ground, the higher it's going to hit. So it may hit really hard and fast and hurt, but I'll tell you what, if you do it right, you can bounce really high from that. And so that's the way I like to think of myself, as a Super Ball. So I always say, no matter how bad the situation is, anything can turn around. My wife and I were done. I thought it was over. I didn't think there was a chance in the world that was coming back around. And it did, because we just did the work. So if you're in this situation, do some work, learn from it, grow from it, and I promise you, you are going to be blessed from it.
Beautiful beasts. Bryan Power signing off. Until next time.